All right, thanks for coming, everybody, today. My name is Lori Heino-Royer. I'm with Daimler Trucks North America. I've been in the industry for 17 years, and I have a lot of knowledge that I get to share with these guys and ask them great questions about the different parts of the trucking tech industry that they are in. So I'm joined here on my left by Shoaib Makani, who is with Keep Trucking, Matt Kropp, which is with FR8Star, and Steve Boyd, who is with Peloton. Each one of them has a different little piece of the overall industry. So before I ask them to talk a little bit about themselves, I just wanted to get a little bit of information about the audience. So who out here is familiar with trucking? All right. Familiar with ELDs? Okay. And who is here to learn about autonomous trucks? Great. All right, with that, I will start with you, Shoaib, and ask you to tell us a little bit about trucking and what's your big idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I am Shoaib Makani. I'm co-founder and CEO of Keep Trucking. We are, as the slide says, building the biggest network of connected trucks in the world. And we're using a regulatory mandate to get there and to accelerate that. At the core, our product is a fleet management platform for trucking companies. We solve compliance, efficiency, and safety problems for trucking companies. But for those who perhaps don't know a ton about the trucking industry, it's highly regulated, particularly on the safety side. And our core product is an electronic logging product. Essentially allows drivers to regulate their hours of service and record their hours of service and present them to officers and to essentially demonstrate that they're compliant with the rules that dictate how many hours they can drive consecutively or in a day or in a week. There is now a government mandate for the use of electronic logging devices. We are a leading vendor of that product, a hardware and software solution for compliant ELDs. And in the process, we are essentially connecting trucks that otherwise were not connected. And that sort of the potential and the value that can be created, the efficiencies that can be gained on the back of that connectivity is what's really exciting. And we're just starting to scratch the surface of what will come on the back of that connectivity.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Kropp, CEO of FR8Star.com. So we're sort of the ride-sharing part of the title of the session. We're a two-sided marketplace for flatbed truck freight. So you can kind of think about, we get the question, are we the Uber for trucking? I actually like to say we're more like the Airbnb for trucking. In our space, because we handle very big loads, so this is things like earth movers or houses or big power transformers, and because our carriers, the trucks that we contract with, have lots of different kinds of trucks, there's a real focus in our platform around curation. So think about Airbnb sort of curating who their hosts are, and matching. So figuring out, for a given load that a shipper's trying to move, who has the right truck, the right kind of truck in the right place that's going the right direction, so that we can actually make that match. Really what we're selling for our shippers is the ability to essentially book a truck like you're booking an airline ticket. So we give them a price and they book the truck and they have transportation for their goods. And for the carriers, that is the companies that operate the trucks, essentially we give them good business that finds them. So we know where they have their trucks, where they're going to be available, and therefore we can match them up with business that pays them well and lets them optimize their business. And then the other big thing we do is we just pay them on time, which is something that they're not necessarily used to. Really the big idea that we're focused on is there's a $100 billion a year market for spot trucking, that is moving goods on a one-off basis. That whole market today is facilitated manually. You have 12,000 brokers in the country that essentially you call a broker, you say I need a truck, that broker then gets on the phone and calls every carrier they have in their list until they find somebody with the truck. It's very, very inefficient. So there's a real opportunity now, and there's us, there are a number of others, Convoy and actually Uber, that are pursuing similar things in other parts of the market, which is really trying to get rid of that manual brokerage part of the transaction and make that automatic.
Great. Yeah. Hi, my name's Steve Boyd. I'm co-founder and vice president of external affairs at Peloton Technology, and you'll see here a video running that shows a little bit about what we're doing. We're focused on using connectivity, advanced safety systems, and better sensors to improve safety and efficiency in trucks. Our initial product set is around truck platooning. So we improve the safety of individual trucks at all times with best-in-class safety systems, best-in-class brake systems. And then using connectivity, we can take pairs of trucks and have them work together. Drivers engaged in both vehicles at all times. So we're improving driver teamwork. This isn't eliminating any jobs. This is improving the job, improving teamwork for the driver. So here you see a couple Peterbilt trucks rolling down the road. The drivers are matched up by our system. We put the trucks together by their weight and braking ability. We put the heavier, longer stopping distance truck always in front. And we use advanced safety systems and connectivity, the dedicated short-range communications vehicle-to-vehicle spectrum, which has been set aside by DOT for safety. We use that to provide a near instantaneous connection between the trucks. This eliminates the perception and reaction time between the trucks so we can go to closer following distances. And then the system detects things like vehicle cut-ins, as you saw there, and improves awareness for the drivers. The following driver also has a view of the road ahead through that link, so the driver's seeing kind of through the truck in front through this video instantaneous link, a view of the road ahead. So a variety of ways that the drivers are able to work together. They also have a shared dedicated radio connection, so they're working together all the time. So it's a teamwork system, safety and efficiency, and as a company in this space, working with these tools and with the big OEMs, we're also looking at next stage solutions that may increase automation, but we see an ongoing role for drivers in the vehicles even as automation increases.
Great. I wanted to let you guys know that we'll be taking questions through Twitter, so you can use the hashtag TruckTech to send questions to us that we will respond to at the end. And Steve, I'll start with you. There's been a lot in the press in just the last week with different companies running autonomous vehicles, from Starsky Robotics to Waymo to Uber to Arizona putting out a call for how first responders will interact with autonomous vehicles. Tell me what you think about what's happening there in all the press.
Yeah, it's been very exciting. Obviously, all the companies in this space are trying to get visibility, trying to get attention from investors and others in the space. One thing that you'll see if you look closely at all these stories is that there's still drivers in those vehicles. The only exception was that Starsky just ran a 7-mile rural road, closed road, with a remote control driver operating the truck. So there was still a driver involved. That was the first time that they publicly announced they'd done something like that without a human on board the vehicle. But closed road, rural, desolate area, 7 miles, highly staged. Most of the things you've seen that are touted, and usually by an editor kind of shortcutting and putting up a kind of an eye-catching headline, most of these things, even the Uber run in Colorado where they ran Anheuser-Busch beer, that was highly orchestrated, escorted by Colorado law enforcement, done in the middle of the night, and with drivers on board monitoring. So an engineer there as well. So these things are in a developmental stage right now. Everything you're seeing out there has drivers on board. The companies that are doing this are operating the system essentially at SAE level 2, where the system, so they say, the system is driving and the driver's monitoring the system at all times and can take over if any issues arise. One company ran across the country recently on the I-10 corridor from California to Jacksonville, Florida, but a driver was on board monitoring at all times and had to take over from time to time. And this is the case with all these systems. So it's an exciting space ahead. At Peloton, we're also looking at these things. We're very pragmatic at our company and focused on what's really going to be useful for the fleets and the truck OEMs, what do they think is really going to work in trucking. And in general, as Lori might comment or might not from her work at Daimler, there's a real need for the human to be in the vehicle for a variety of reasons. She mentioned first responders, so if a vehicle is in a crash and there's no human on board, who's going to be there to deal with the situation at that point? Maintenance issues, if a truck's disabled, suddenly you have a stranded vehicle out there on the road. In addition, there's the other things drivers do in the overall tasks: customer service, customer relations, the pickup of goods on one end, the delivery on the other end. At most, we may see in controlled environments the beginnings of exit to exit on highways, on certain highways, where you might have a vehicle that is for a period not does not have a driver in it, but there'll be other functions for these drivers on either end where they're going to pick up that truck and take it into its destination. They're going to deliver it to where it needs to be on the highway to get into that mode. And what this really means is actually a better future for drivers, better jobs. Today, if they're out on the road for many days at a time, it's a hard job. There's a lot of turnover. In fact, there's 100% turnover in the industry, people moving around, leaving the industry. It's a very hard, unhealthy job. And so, frankly, we see this kind of move as something where the health and well-being of drivers can improve. It can be a much more interesting industry over time. Drivers will be able to take a break, perhaps, and be in the truck doing other things, planning their backhaul, looking at other parts of the logistics process their company's part of, so more of a knowledge working along with the driving. So there's a lot of exciting things with that. For now, though, we think what we're seeing here is improved safety, which is really important. We need to improve the safety of these trucks, enhance the abilities of drivers, and that's the paramount thing. When you see the 38,000 deaths a year on the highways, about 4,000 related to trucks, that's unacceptable. It's a national crisis, and we've been accepting that for too long. So safety first, improve efficiency, and improve the well-being of drivers. That's where we see this going.
Great, thank you. And I do agree, from Daimler's perspective, we absolutely see a role for the driver being attached with the vehicle for quite some time. So Matt, tell me why you went into brokerage and how you look at turning it from just brokerage company into a marketplace.
So as I said in the introduction, I mean, this, in a way, you look at this market and it's sort of crazy. You know, it's a $100 billion a year industry, just the spot market. So that is just the loads that are booked on a one-off basis. And that's just in the U.S. And it's essentially all done manually. So, you know, you have these 12,000 brokers who play, a very important role in terms of matching up shippers and carriers, but they're not terribly effective at it. So, like I said, if they're looking for a truck, they're literally calling different carriers one by one until they find somebody who has a truck. And of course, the first one that they find, that's what they're going to book, because they can't spend more time. But if that truck's 500 miles away from the pickup, that was not an efficient choice. So really the optimal approach here is to have a marketplace. Think like a stock exchange, where you have all the capacity in the market available to book. You have the demand side, the shippers, able to book into that capacity, and now you're finding not the first truck that you got to, but rather the best truck that matches that load. So we look at this as, first, it's the right thing. It's the most efficient way for the market to operate. But the other thing is, these marketplaces, ourselves included, are really getting a lot of traction. And so, I actually see it's inevitable. It's the same thing as you introduce Uber, you introduce Airbnb, you introduce eBay in each of their respective markets, and because of positive network effects, they essentially take over, right? They grow so big as to really dominate that market. That's what we're seeing, the beginning signs of that in trucking, and I think it's really just a matter of a couple of years before we really get very strong penetration here. And it's a good thing. It's a really good thing, especially for the carriers. Trucking companies, by and large, are small businesses. So especially in our part of the market, because we work in the flatbed space, most of these carriers are under 20 trucks, even smaller than that, 5 to 10 trucks. And a 5 to 10 truck carrier is really like a mom and pop business. It's a driver who bought a truck, started his own company, bought a couple more trucks, hired some drivers. He probably has one person working in the office, taking care of the billing and bookkeeping, and that's the business. And there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these carriers in the country. They don't have the access to technology that the bigger fleets have. They don't have an IT department. So they really don't have the ability themselves to create really efficient operations, and they rely a lot on these brokers to give them business. Problem is the brokers take 20% up to 50% of the transaction. Very frequently the brokers pay them late, so it's a strategy on the part of the broker is to essentially collect money from the shipper and then delay payment to the carrier for 30 to 60 days. Or to charge the carrier a factoring fee if they want their money faster. And then the brokers, because they make money based on the spread, so they charge a shipper a certain amount and try to pay as little as possible to the carrier, they often don't give the carrier all the information that they need to properly price that load. So the carriers end up, showing up thinking that they have all day to pick up a load when actually the pickup was at 8 o'clock in the morning. They get, they're made to wait until the next day, for example, because there's no space, no dock space. That costs the carrier money. Well, the broker did that to them essentially to get them to take a lower price. So it's not a very functional market today, and there's a lot of opportunity, and we want to be part of that.
Great, thank you. So Shoaib, your company is really founded on the ELD mandate that's come into play. So tell me a little bit about the kind of data that you're collecting and what you plan to do with it as you're generating all this information.
Yeah, just a little bit of context on the ELD. The ELD mandate is bringing this industry online. It is connecting vehicles that otherwise were disconnected, and the result of that is a ton of data is unlocked. And really there's three key pieces of data that we are now able to have and track continuously. There is, where is that driver? Where is that vehicle? How much time does that driver have available to drive? And is that vehicle loaded? And it's really those three key aspects of the ELD that generate the subsequent value. The direct application of ELDs is to improve safety. That was the intent of the federal regulatory mandate, and it is being realized. But the sort of externality or indirect impact is the unlocking of this data and making it available for continuous tracking and then subsequent optimization. And that's where the efficiency gains of the ELD mandate come in. When you know exactly where that vehicle is, when you know if it's loaded or not, and you know how much time that driver has available to drive, you can fundamentally run a more efficient marketplace. Going back to Matt's point around the sort of manual sort of hunting for a driver or a vehicle to move a load, that results in underutilization of assets and sort of under efficiency. You're not finding the right truck to move that load because any one broker has a limited view of where capacity is. Whereas now the ELD brings all these vehicles online, and in our network in particular, we have 200,000 trucks that were otherwise disconnected that are now online. And the sort of potential to bring them loads and more efficiently match them with jobs is the next stage of our sort of company's evolution. We are going to work with the sort of the brokers and the shippers to essentially give access to our capacity and do it in a really efficient way. And that's really the exciting thing about ELDs. It's not just about safety, but it's really going to drive efficiency. And the benefits to carriers and to shippers and to existing brokers will be very significant.
Great. So all three of your companies are collecting data in completely new ways. What ways do you think it'll be used in the future? So you're all using it today to deliver the product you have today. Where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, just to key off what Shoaib's saying, obviously for Marketplace, what we really want to do is matching supply and demand, right? So we have shippers coming in that have things that they need to move. We always want to know where the trucks are. And so we have our way of getting feedback. We engage with our carriers. They essentially tell us where they are, where they're going to be, what they want. But access to this kind of data that Shoaib was talking about is sort of the next level, right? So the more that we can do to really understand where all of the freight flows are, the better that we can, obviously make those matches, but also keep those carriers loaded. They've got an asset, they've got drivers, they need to keep them busy as much as they can. That's where you get efficiency. So that data is huge. For us, pricing is a really important lever that we can pull. We always want to be trying to match the right market price. And so understanding where freight is and understanding where trucks is gives us that information about supply and demand so that we can set the right price.
Yeah, I would add that we're looking at really granular data down at the vehicle level, situational data around the vehicles, and so we're very focused on using that to improve safety. You can enhance driver coaching, driver safety by monitoring patterns. You can take data that trucks are picking up on the road and share it over to state and other entities to help other motorists know about the road ahead, better, more granular weather data, better road information, improved mapping, detection of changes in construction zones, all of these kind of things. Our vehicles and many of these other truck companies' vehicles are gathering a lot of data all the time, and this begins to provide a better view of what's going on with the overall system. In addition, I think the sum of this data can also set the stage for how you can begin to have greater automation on some parts of the road by knowing more about the road.
Yeah, there's another data set that we are aggregating that has application outside of the marketplace sort of aspect that we were just talking about, and that is around driver performance and sort of driver safety. We have an understanding of how drivers drive and both the critical events, but then also when in fact an accident happens, we're able to determine with relative accuracy like what transpired in that situation. We're actually adding a video monitoring product as well, where you will have video intelligence to sort of correlate with that critical event. And the real application of that is improving safety, and carriers will benefit from this. Overwhelmingly, drivers are safe. They operate safely. The vast majority of accidents that involve a commercial motor vehicle are not the commercial driver's fault. And this data that is now coming online, both the critical event sort of telematics data plus the video data, will allow carriers to run more safely, but also reduce operating costs, particularly as it relates to insurance. So we're partnering with folks like Progressive to actually deliver reduced rates for their commercial auto insurance on the back of sort of this report card. This is how safe I've driven, and I should be rewarded for it. And that, again, results in aiding carriers in being more profitable, safer on the road, and just running a better operation. And so bringing the ELD mandate has catalyzed adoption of telematics devices. It has brought this industry online, and the results for these small carriers are very substantial. They're getting access to the data that otherwise has only been available to the largest carriers.
Great. So we have a question coming in through Twitter that I think is coming up at a very perfect time, so I'll throw it out to you guys. And it's around the cybersecurity. So with all of this data that's coming online, what are you doing to protect it, and how are we keeping trucks from being hijacked, and what items are in place to prevent that type of thing from happening?
Sure, yeah, great. So, well, first of all, I'd say this, that vehicles today, without any automation, without any connectivity, have cybersecurity issues with them. And they have just the basic connectivity of infotainment systems or even just the physical security issues. Trucks today can be hacked. Folks have done a few stunts to show that. So we need to work on improving general cybersecurity, general physical security of vehicles with today's vehicles. The addition of higher automation and greater connectivity, sure, that opens up potentially some other aspects, but we got to start with square one, which is the vehicles today. So I know the OEMs, I know Daimler's been a real leader on this. The OEMs are working to improve the safety, the security of the core vehicle. In addition, like companies like ourselves, we're working very hard on using best practice approaches to individually authenticate all messaging, to provide in our connectivity between vehicles. We're authenticating between each vehicle and to the cloud. We have multiple layers of protection that we put into the systems. We have supervisory systems that are whose sole job is to monitor and look for unusual communications and activities. So best practice approaches are evolving all the time. The one thing they always say about cybersecurity is you don't divulge all your methods, or you begin to erode your protection because of the folks on the other side of the table are working against you. But definitely an important area, and one that a lot of work needs to happen on right now with non-automated vehicles before we get into a later stage of higher connectivity and higher automation vehicles. I would add also that I would say in general, like a big takeaway from here today would be that what's coming first in the industry in general is connectivity and safety at a greater scale, and an ability to improve the nature of the work, improve operational efficiencies across the industry, improve physical vehicle efficiency and safety, and that's what's coming next. And then that sets the groundwork for the ability to increase automation because you've got those better, safer vehicle assets out there. You've got a better network for making that all work.
This might be a time to bring up blockchain. For us, on the marketplace side, it's slightly different, right? So here you're talking about, someone hacking your truck and, remote controlling it somewhere. There's actually a very big issue today, has always been in trucking, which is fraud and theft. And that's something that I think only becomes, in some ways, more dangerous, as we get more and more of the freight booked through marketplaces. And so, what this looks like is, either a fraudulent carrier, essentially posing as another carrier or as a legitimate carrier, literally showing up to pick up a load and then disappearing in the sunset, or just issues with non-payment on the shipper side. So a lot of that, we have to tackle within the marketplace context in terms of authenticating, verifying that both parties are who they say they are, thinking about things like credit terms or actually, accepting payment up front. But it will get very interesting as we move into blockchain in trucking. And my personal opinion is it's going to be a while before it happens. Just knowing our customers, I think that they're probably not ready to adopt it right now. But it's a fantastic application for blockchain because you think about, what is truck freight? It is just a contract. It's a contract between the shipper and the carrier to move an item from point A to point B and to provide payment when it reaches point B. So that's sort of a perfect use case for a blockchain contract. So I think we will see that, and there certainly are some pretty big moves in the industry right now to start to try to paint the picture of what that looks like. I just don't think it's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Great. So staying with data and all things technical for just a moment. So what are you guys doing in the space of AI and machine learning?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. So, our initial go-to-market, our initial product is around sort of compliance and safety, and that really is the foundational sort of mission of the company. And we're extending now into video monitoring. And that's really where, for us, the AI machine learning element becomes relevant. So our view of the world is drivers are critical. They will continue to be in the truck, in the cab, for a very long time. And what we want to do is augment and assist them. We think just in the same way that knowledge workers are getting intelligent assistance to make them more effective, so should truck drivers. And so our video product is not going to be just about sort of critical event recording. Something happened, record it and send it up. We are going to get into sort of assisting the driver with on-the-edge machine vision to essentially alert them if they are following too closely or departing lanes. And these are hard problems, and over time, obviously, the OEMs are rolling out sort of driver assist technology, but there is millions of tractors that are deployed already that we can service, and we can sort of make safer by deploying machine vision and machine learning technology to essentially augment that driver and make that driver safer and make roads safer. So that's how we think about it. The application of AI and machine learning for us is specifically around driver safety and in the context of video.
So for us, this is about pricing and matching. And this is something that we're engaged in now. Especially if you think about the pricing problem, there is not a market price, especially in our part of the market, in the flatbed and oversized overweight trucking. There is no market price. There's no way to say, what does it cost to move a 5-axle RGN from Los Angeles to New York? There's a range of prices, and so the state of the art is you get bids, and those bids will vary dramatically. But because we're running a marketplace and we're getting these bids all the time, we actually have this great data set. So we're now moving more and more toward using machine learning techniques to actually predict what the right price is, what price a carrier will accept. with the goal of being able to set the right price and eliminate this back and forth bidding and negotiation that happens today. So it's a very current problem that we can solve today with the data set and the techniques that we have. The next step then is really getting into better routing and matching. So figuring out what the right, which truck should go where, what stops they should be making, and optimizing those routes.
Likewise, we're looking at machine learning and AI in the frame of looking at better helping fleets with their optimization of their freight operations and how they can tie in tools like platooning into their freight planning. And we're also looking at, in the machine vision area, at the ways that we can improve safety around the vehicle, safety for the driver, improve the alerts the driver gets about the road ahead, improve mapping and pattern recognition about traffic patterns ahead, and set the stage for the tools for higher automation down the road.
Great. So we're going to switch topics here for a moment. And recently, there's been a very large Me Too movement across the nation about women's equality in the industry. And I would be remiss to not notice that there's me and 3 of you sitting here.
Well, you're in charge, though.
I'm in charge. So maybe tell me a little bit about how you see women overall in the industry and in your company specifically.
Yeah. We are actively making an effort within the company to improve our gender balance, and it's something that I'm very conscious of and is actually on our list of sort of goals for 2018, right at the top of the list. We obviously embrace this idea of diversity of thought and experience results in better outcomes, just fundamentally, and so we want to recruit great people into the company and improve our gender diversity. Now, as it relates to the industry, I think trucking is actually going to become more inclusive overall, and this has a lot to do with this idea of getting home. Generally, when you find that the retention problem in trucking is linked, directly correlated with how often you can sleep in your own bed, which it's reasonable. I mean, there's folks out there that are okay, living on the road, where their home is on wheels, but the vast majority of people really do want to get back to their house. They want to come home. And I think as the industry comes online, you get better freight matching and better sort of actual allocation of loads to drivers more efficiently. You're going to see the population of those who can get home increase, and that will, I believe, make the job more attractive, particularly to women. I believe that will actually impact the rate or the sort of population of women in this business more than anything else. And so if people get home, they're happy, and that will improve.
So just say real quickly, so we're very focused on recruiting women, and actually half our product team are women, and that we really want to try to keep that balance. Now we're still small, so that's maybe a bit more easy to achieve at this point. But it's interesting being both in tech and in trucking, both of which you don't think of as having a real focus on having women involved and having diversity. And I think, if you'd ask our team and ask the women on our team, they're actually really excited about being part of this. The business itself is fundamentally really about helping small businesses. So there is really a sense of, you think, I don't know, trucking just doesn't strike you as something that women would be interested in. But we have this real focus on the personal connection with our drivers, with our carriers, and I think the culture is one that is very welcoming, and we've started from the beginning to say we really want to focus on diversity as one of our core values. So something that we're definitely trying to make happen.
Yeah, likewise, we're very interested to improve the diversity in our own company. We have 2 of our executive team are women, and we're a little above 20% women across our company, which is a little bit above parity, above the other tech companies in our region in Silicon Valley. A lot of work to be done to improve on all of that. I do think that when you're dealing with freight, with trucking, and it's and vehicle technology, and you're in Silicon Valley, you've got several different strikes against you as far as traditionally bringing women into this space. But we've been working hard at that. I do agree that as the level of tech increases across the logistics system, across the freight industry, I think it'll become more interesting to a broader cross-section of people in general, beyond just gender, but other diversity as well. And great point, Shoaib, that the relay-style driving, or the getting people to return home every night, is a key opener for keeping people both in jobs that are healthier and better, but are more interesting to more people. Safer as well, like not having to stay overnight truck stops across the road. That's a big issue for women drivers and for others. So that's a big part of it. I think there's a great opportunity ahead here. That's the positive story that underlies the crazy headlines about millions of jobs being destroyed, is that there's a great opportunity to improve the nature of work in this industry and to bring new people, bring the next generation into this industry, a healthier job, a better job. Right now, it's crazy. The average age of drivers, about 55, but life expectancy for long-haul drivers just around that, like 60. So terrible, very difficult, unhealthy job many times, and we need to change that. And I think there's a lot of opportunity around that, and that'll bring more people into it.
Yeah, I mean, technology is going to make this job safer, more efficient, and what's exciting is both the combination of pull, right? I mean, carriers want to deploy technology. They recognize it's necessary both to compete, but then also to retain talent. And it really is changing the business, both from a pull and push. Obviously, like regulatory mandates help. It's real sort of wind at the back. But I think the combination of the two is going to bring significant change for the better to this business.
Great. So I like all those answers, and I'll just throw in a little bit for myself. I fell into the industry almost on accident quite some time ago, and I found my passion not in the actual product of the vehicle, but in the industry as a whole, and the fact that everything that you eat, everything that you touch, everything that you come into physical contact with has been brought to you by a truck, and it's really the underpinning of the entire economy. And for me, that's where the passion's at. So you can find your passion in different places through the whole industry. And I've been happy here for quite some time. So with that, I'll move to another Twitter question that we have received, and that is, how does someone who is not familiar with the trucking industry get involved as a developer to help build these technologies we've been talking about?
Come see me. We could use you.
Yeah, we're recruiting aggressively. We're trying to actually scale our engineering team right now from 50 to 150 this year, which is a challenge in Silicon Valley, but we're going to attempt to do so. There's a lot to build here. There's meaningful problems to solve, and I think there's finally now a focus from technology entrepreneurs and investors on this space. I still don't think it is sufficient for the market size and the opportunity set. You see how much money and resources are flowing into consumer transportation. I believe the same, or if not more, is warranted in commercial, and that will happen. I think the sort of tide is turning, both from the investor interest, but then also great people wanting to build for this problem.
Just to amplify that a bit, so one stat that stuck with me. So when Uber started, taxis and limos were, I think, a $13 billion a year business in the US, and trucking is a $700 billion a year business in the US. So the scale of this industry, I mean, as Lori was saying, everything in this room, everything that you buy was moved on a truck. The scale of this business is enormous. And that's not to say that there isn't already technology in trucking. There's certainly a lot of technology, but it's such a big industry. There's so many opportunities, and so it's embedded systems. It's for us, this is all web-based and mobile software. You guys are doing stuff with autonomous and radar and sensing and so forth. So if you're interested in this space and you're in technology, there's limitless opportunity.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think we haven't talked about it much here yet, but you've got first mile delivery, last mile delivery. You've got all these different modes that get right outside of trucking itself, but are in the delivery of the packages to the door, with drones, with light automated ground vehicles, these kinds of things. So a lot of this is there's a lot of opportunity in it. I think folks should certainly be looking to start their own companies, bring out new ideas. Great point, Joey. There's not enough investment in it when you look at the scale of the industry. $700 billion in revenues just U.S., but globally massive. So there's just a huge opportunity here. And I think we're getting to a stage because of improved connectivity, improved data. You now begin to have the tools to really look at where are these opportunities and segment those markets and target them with new kinds of devices and new kinds of approaches. And I think throughout it, because safety is paramount, there's also the ability to remotely supervise systems and to make sure that what you're putting out there is going to securely get where it's going and be safe. There's new human roles involved with that. Oversight of these systems, technical support and repair and maintenance of these systems. So there's a whole wave of new great jobs, both for people who just want good jobs and also for people who want to create new companies.
Yeah. We're actually soon to be launching an app marketplace. We think about sort of our opportunity as a platform, really. The prerequisite is bringing the carriers, the trucks, the drivers online, which we have now done at significant scale and that will grow. But we believe the next sort of set of innovation is now possible because the assets are online. And so we're inviting third-party developers to actually build on top using our APIs and over time actually being able to sort of build into our product to enable additional functionality. We don't think we can solve all the problems for our carriers and our customers ourselves. There are things that folks in the room and outside will dream up that we can't. And so that's going to be a critical part of our future.
Let me just add to that. I think there's a real opportunity here because the technology in trucking is moving to almost look like a consumer business. I'd be interested in what you guys think about this. But traditionally, the companies, the trucking companies, the carriers that could afford technology were the bigger carriers. And so it was very much an enterprise software sale. So if you're a Schneider and you have 15,000 trucks, they have a big IT department. They have big investment in IT. They're buying enterprise software. If you're a vendor sort of selling into that market, you're thinking about it like an enterprise sale. You have professional services that are installing servers on premise and so forth. It's completely changing now, and it's largely because of things like what you guys are doing, where since most of the market, most of the trucks, the majority of the trucks on the road are in these small fleets, they look like consumers. These are individuals, they all have smartphones, I promise. We did a survey, I think we got, 95% of our survey respondents said that they're tech savvy, so self-identified as tech savvy. They all have smartphones. The engines are all connected and phoning home. There's a ton of data, but this is all new. And so, if we look at this as this big consumer market, there are 3.5 million truck drivers in the country. There's a ton of opportunity there that has not been tapped because really it hasn't been, you haven't been able to reach that market before, and now you can. So definitely, I would encourage you as a developer and entrepreneur, this is a great space to get into.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, just to add one bit to that, I mean, the reason we exist is because there are a lot of small carriers. That is core to what we do. And it's not like there hasn't been a fleet management platform for trucking companies before. There are incumbents in this space. And what we were really able to do was bring that technology down market and into small carriers, giving them the same tools that have only been available to the big guys for a very long time. And that wasn't possible until you had mass deployment of mobile devices, like true universal deployment, and that took time in this business. But it's very much here. So a lot of the groundwork, the foundation building, has been done, and that will allow for a lot of subsequent innovation.
Yeah, well said. I would say that in general there's a growing number of companies in this space like ourselves. We're also hiring in the engineering area and in marketing. And here in Texas, there's actually a lot going on. You've got the University of Texas Transportation program here that some of you may be involved with. I would check that out. There's a lot of things you can tap into through that. There's a number of incubation programs that are looking at getting new transportation tech ideas off the ground here in Texas. Texas Transportation Institute, of course, they're over at Texas A&M, but really statewide, and they're actually the largest national institute for transportation. They're doing a lot working with other companies, bringing them into Texas. They've established a bunch of connected and automated vehicle proving ground facilities here. There's really great tools here in the state to be part of this. It's really a leading edge state in many ways, so lots of opportunity there.
So I hear you all talking about data and how these different pieces are shaping the work that you're doing, yet all the press that we're reading about is still just on autonomous. Do any of you have a comment or thought around sort of, is it just that autonomous is so sexy, or how do we get to the point where these technologies how do they lead to that? Is there something else we should be focusing on first, or how do we get to this point?
Right, it's an interesting challenge. Obviously, I think it originates in the fascination humans have always had about robots and about autonomy, about self-operating other entities. And so that, the science fiction of that, the sort of dark futures of that, the Terminator, whatnot, that kind of thing evokes a lot of reaction and gets eyeballs across wider viewership. I think part of it has to do with the increasing effort, the increasing diversified media space, which means that media have to work harder to get attention to what they're covering. So you'll often see a story that's about something that is very clearly not automated, but the headline is about automation. So I think we may need some improved journalism going on. If anybody out there is in journalism, there's a good opportunity. You can write a captivating, powerful story. You don't have to go with a shock 'em headline. You can make it better. You just have to be better at writing and better at storytelling. So I think part of it is that. No question that there is automation on the horizon here, but it's a horizon that includes a better role for humans. So the machines working together with the humans, the machine supervised by the human. For all the talk about artificial intelligence, all of the experts will point out that the machines, they self-learn in a certain way, lots of repetition, and they're stuck in a rigid lane. The human mind is able to apply learnings from one thing to another completely different area in a unique way. So ongoing role for humans, even as artificial intelligence increases. But it's an exciting topic, and that's why it gets covered that way. I think it is a long-standing challenge in this country that we have this terrible death toll every year on the highways, and it doesn't get covered. We just accept it. And yet it's of a scale, if you looked at it as if it was disease, if it was a sickness, there would be a national crisis, there would be a whole health challenge program focused on it. There'd be a war on this safety problem. And we need that. We need to understand that that's important, and there's better ways to do the storytelling about that, and that needs to be done. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think there's definitely value in that story being told. It draws attention, drives conversation, and has the potential to really improve road safety. I think our view of the world is, change isn't step function usually. A business like this doesn't revolutionize overnight. It evolves. And so we think a lot about sort of what does that transition path look like? And how do we sort of leverage the technology that's going to make autonomous possible, level 4, level 5 possible, and bring it into market today to make roads safer and to help drivers and just make their lives easier. And that's where sort of that idea of machine vision to assist the driver and augment the driver and make them more productive is I believe the sort of realizing the promise of that next generation technology today. Because there's no question, road safe, there's no reason people should be dying on the roads at the rate that they do. And we can control that, and I think that rate will reduce well in advance of full autonomous in trucking or full autonomy in commercial motor vehicles. We are going to see the gains of technology directly in the coming years.
I would just add real quickly that I think the automation story is an important one to be told. I want to hear what Matt has to say about it. But I think that we need to be telling a better story about the positives coming from it rather than all of this fear.
Sure.
Fear of job destruction, fear of a machine takeover. It's as if these are script writers writing this, not somebody writing about what are the real facts here. The industry needs to do a better job of telling that story, pointing out where these new jobs are, and talking about this transition that's going to occur over a 5 to 10 year period in certain segments, but not everywhere, and how there's this better horizon ahead. But
well, the key is it's also very differential depending upon what segment you're talking about. So, for example, we move a lot of things that are big. I would wager that you may never see those going on fully autonomous trucks. There is so much, to how to load the truck, how to strap it down, all the safety concerns about moving things on highways where imagine these trucks that have things hanging off the side, right, or things hanging off the back. The idea that those kinds of loads would ever run without a driver in the truck is probably not going to happen. So I think you'll see, as Steve was saying, there are use cases where maybe there's a driver in the truck, but he's on his rest period, and it's a straightaway on the highway overnight. Those kinds of use cases might happen sooner. There are other use cases like moving super heavy loads where I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah, well, so another thing that's out there that's really interesting is that as you do increase automation, you can also begin to move things a little more slowly because you don't have a driver hours of service limitation. You don't have the other limitations that come with that. So if you have even in the last mile delivery, you can have slower moving vehicles, lighter weight vehicles. You can change what the vehicles are like as you make these changes, which improve efficiency, improve safety, and improve options. So there's a bright future ahead on all this.
Great. So we'll take another Twitter question. So what are the non-technical barriers to increased automation, and how do your businesses plan to combat those for each of your different products?
The non-technical barriers to increase automation.
Regulation.
Yeah, that's
regulation
fair.
and consumer perception. I mean, biggest thing is how many of us are going to be comfortable driving down the freeway and looking up at the big rig with nobody in the driver's seat. And I think society is just going to have to catch up to that. Now, we'll get there because you're going to have Uber and Google and everybody else with their self-driving cars, and so people will get used to that. But I think it's a pretty high hurdle given how big these trucks are.
Yeah, I would agree that public education is key on this. I think a lot of what needs to happen here are demonstration programs, pilot programs that can show effective safety and good use cases around some of these solutions. That's a key part of not just public education, but showing effectiveness to regulators and showing a way ahead that systems that have some higher automation to them can coexist with manually driven vehicles in some ways. And some of that may involve having managed lanes where there's higher automation vehicles operating, and other lanes where there's manually driven vehicles with some barriers, in fact, if needed in some areas. And I think that we've actually found that there's been strong uptake and interest by state regulators, by state governments, as they try to open up new ways to tackle the congestion problems, mobility problems, safety problems. And we've actually found folks knocking on our door saying, hey, come here, show your system, work with us on this. And as they plan new infrastructure and new road building, they're thinking ahead in the states as to how they'll construct the roads a little differently to allow for higher automation in the period ahead. For example, you want to make sure you've got clear shoulders so that if you have vehicles that are operating under human supervision but may not have an operator on board in the future for some segment of their operation, they need to pull to the shoulder if they get disabled, and they need a clearer way to do that. So there's a variety of that going on. There's also increasing amounts of sensoring, improving the ability of the road operators to understand what's going on the roadway, cameras across the roadways. We were just on the Florida Turnpike in December and ran a 1,200-mile operation there, and they were able to but capture all of it. They did put it out on their cable access station. They were able to capture all of it because they have cameras and sensors all along that route. So the tools are beginning to be there to better manage road activity, whether it's passenger or freight, to improve safety and set the stage for higher automation that just improves the lives for all of us, for drivers, for other motorists. So I think that the barriers are surmountable, and they're being surmounted right now. And I think that with folks like you getting involved and doing more on this, it's an exciting time. We want to bring thoughtfulness to this process ahead, and that there's not so much to fear here. There's a lot more to be excited about that's positive.
Great. So how can cities that have trucking expertise but are not tech hubs attract companies that are innovating in this sector?
Well, certainly access to labor is big. It's always hard to attract engineering talent. So cities can make that easier to do. I will share. France is actually doing something quite interesting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but they've started a program where they actually are subsidizing the salaries for engineers. And they will, through their Ex-Im Bank, actually loan you as the company sort of that subsidy up front. So it's almost like a funding event. I think that's incredibly aggressive. I'm not sure that cities are going to do the same kind of thing, but thinking about innovative ways like that to make it more attractive to locate for tech talent. Certainly in trucking, we have to serve the whole country. We have to have customer support for the whole country. So having good locations for call centers. There are certainly some hubs emerging kind of in the, say Nashville is one, for example, that are attractive to set up sales hubs. That's another way that you can attract talent.
Yeah, we've taken very much a distributed approach to team building. We think there's great folks everywhere, and we sort of embrace this idea. We have 3 offices in the U.S. San Francisco is home base, Nashville, Tennessee, and Buffalo, New York. And we're doing both product development, sales, and sort of operations across all 3. So I mean, I think it's more possible than ever to build technology businesses outside of Silicon Valley, and in fact, those who I think take advantage of them are at an advantage. There's a real arbitrage to be had there, and so we've embraced this idea of sort of being distributed, and there's I think there's things that cities can do to attract talent, of course, and attract tech dollars, but I think there's also just going to be a natural extension. Like entrepreneurs who are faced with constraints are naturally going to look to relieve them, both in terms of capital, but then also resources. We're going to chase talent, and talent is everywhere.
Yeah, great points. What's great about transportation, of course, is it's, of course, flowing all across the country, and you've got these existing freight hubs around the country that may not have been tech centers historically, but around these new kinds of technologies can become that. You all mentioned Nashville. There's also Chattanooga has popped up a growing. There, you get a shout out for Chattanooga there. Awesome. Yeah. So good. So like Chattanooga's they've actually made a big effort to create kind of a freight innovation hub there, and it's a great town. Like people, it's sort of a Boulder, Colorado of the South in terms of wilderness activities and all that kind of thing. It's right there in the center of where many of the trucking companies are headquartered. If you drop a pin kind of in sort of Arkansas area, you go around Little Rock and up into Tennessee, you've got kind of the heart of many of the top fleets are headquartered in that region. So you've got these little new Silicon Valleys of transportation innovation already happening. You've got Detroit, of course, and its urban renaissance that's been underway to bring a next wave of automated of vehicle technology around automation and connectivity. They're doing a lot there. That's been exciting, and across the state. You've got then the truck makers are beginning to do more around all of this in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the case of Volvo and Mack in Pennsylvania, Lori's company in Portland, Oregon, and has centers elsewhere in the country. That's Daimler Trucks. And then you've got Denton, Texas, Peterbilt, right here in the region in Dallas, who we work with closely. They opened a Silicon Valley Tech Center, but are also doing stuff right here nearby in Dallas. And Columbus, Ohio has been doing a lot of work, thanks to Governor Kasich there, who did a big effort there to bring in more opening up of opportunity for testing and operations in the region, and investments that have been made. There's a DOT Smart City program there in Columbus that we're part of. So Phoenix, Arizona now, first place that they're now beginning to run some robo-taxis that Waymo has got now launched there. And the state of Arizona in general has really been creative in opening up the ability for connected and automated vehicle testing and deployment to occur. So I think one thing you can do is keep talking to whatever state you're from, and city you're from, talk to officials there about, hey, here's some ways to create some opportunity in the city and in the state. Here in Texas, they're doing a great job of it. So a lot going on.
Great. Well, it's been an honor to sit up here with you guys today. I only have one final question, and that is, where can anyone in the audience find you a little bit later if they want to talk to you more?
That's a great segue. So actually there's a Tech in Trucking networking event at 3:30 at the Austin Taco Project. That's the restaurant downstairs in the lobby. So if anyone wants to come and talk more trucking, and there'll be others there to talk about trucking, we'll be there.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, that was great.